Welcome to Project Vanguard Podcast, home of the community of veterans in energy, where we explore the journeys of veterans leading America's energy future. We believe energy security is national security, and our mission is to double the number of veterans working in the energy industry. I'm your host, Kevin Doffin. Today's guest is Kevin Boudreaux, a Navy veteran and the head of power supply at Monarch Energy. Monarch develops powered land facilities that can host a range of assets. Kevin's lived through some of the most important inflection points in the modern power markets, from the Enron bankruptcy to the VPPs work that Solar City and Tesla did, even to today's shift toward massive industrial and data center loads. We talk about why the hydrogen boom stalled under the new federal tax credit guidance, where blue hydrogen still has legs, and why Monarch is positioning into big load development as the next major battleground. We dig into interconnection constraints, on-site generation, and what it really takes to bring multi-hundred-megawatt projects to life in today's grid environment. In the back half of the episode, we'll get to something every veteran needs: networking. With the routines, discipline as your leadership base, and the inner work of emotional intelligence, curiosity, reading, and daily practice that sets you up for any mission and any energy industry. If this conversation hits home, share with another veteran who needs to hear it. And if you want more episodes that help veterans lead America's energy future, hit follow and leave a rating. It's the easiest way to help this community grow. Let's get into it. So let's get into it. Kevin, thank you for being here. You know, you've done a lot of different things that I'm excited to get into in your time in the energy industry, and it's great that you were able to make the time for this today.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. And I also know from our previous discussions, it's going to be like pulling compliments about all the different things you've actually accomplished in your career. Cause you're like, yeah, we did some things that may have written the industry rules, but it was part of a team. Like, it's the consummate veteran response to, making sure everybody gets credit.
That's right. It's all about teamwork, man.
That's right, man. Well, hey, just for people who may be more on like traditional oil and gas, or just they're coming out of the military, or they're traditional renewables, kind of give a quick overview of, where we're going. I'll kind of catch us up, I think, and you correct me where I'm wrong, is, hydrogen's just been seen as kind of this bridge fuel. Bill Gates called it the Swiss Army knife, which I don't think is accurate. But I mean, round trip efficiency on using wind, solar, other means of power production, right? There's like gray hydrogen, which we have tons of infrastructure for in the Gulf Coast because it's been used for decades, but that's based on like coal and other methods of steam methane reformation. It's a different SMR than our nuclear folks would know. But basically the thought was this will all catch us up. This will be the way that oil and gas is still in the molecules game in the energy transition. Hydrogen just had like this huge halo and a huge rainbow of like, oh, but if it's made from nuclear, it's pink hydrogen. If it's made from nat gas, it's blue hydrogen, blah, 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 blah. And all that being said, what happened with everything that came out of the Inflation Reduction Act around hydrogen, trying to promote it? What happened with that, and where are we today?
Yeah, I think to hit the high point, as you said, hydrogen has been an industry in play for quite a while, especially along the Gulf Coast for petrochem and other uses, especially around steam methane reforming, as you mentioned, from natural gas. And there was a big push to bring hydrogen more to market from other technologies, other cleaner technologies. And that's where you mentioned all the colors. That's where you get the colors from. But the big push for us was green hydrogen. We had heard some rumblings in the industry. I was at a company called Priority Power at the time and working with the company I'm at now, Monarch Energy, to help them figure out how to pull all this together. Ended up going over to Monarch Energy and joining them just because the initiative was so attractive. Still is today, but it was really about seeing that production tax credit coming. And when it hit, as you mentioned, there was a big push, a big craze, a lot of hype in the industry to do it. And it was simple at the time. It was based on reducing your carbon intensity, and we'll give you a certain dollar per kilogram production tax credit based on how much you reduce your carbon intensity, right? So it seemed fairly intuitive at the time. And then
until the rulemaking.
until December of 2023 when the Treasury Department decided to change the game on us and introduced the concept of the three pillars that made it a little more stringent out there to really do green hydrogen. That stalled the market for a year. We lost a lot of players, a lot of interest. We still pushed on, but then we had the election, and that really threw everything for a loop. And now a lot of that's completely frozen and potentially completely off the table. So there is still some movement in the industry, but I think it's going to be mostly around the blue hydrogen area, which is really taking the steam methane reforming or gray hydrogen
Mm-hmm.
and adding carbon capture to it.
Right.
So that's a natural progression. It keeps the Trump administration focused on the oil and gas markets
Mm-hmm.
where they want to be. So yeah, we'll see how it shakes out, but it hasn't stopped us as a company.
So while you're talking about that, talk about what Monarch does as a project developer in this space and what's your role inside of that process.
Yeah, good question. It's not unlike renewable energy development that you're familiar with. We're a powered land developer. That's what we're doing for our large-scale green hydrogen projects. We go across the nation. We look for sites that are optimal for large-scale projects such as green hydrogen. So you look for 345 kV lines, you look for land, you look for natural gas pipelines, you look for everything that you're going to need to build a large-scale facility, optimally somewhat close to a metropolitan center, just all the parameters that we need for that specific technology. And so my background is power. So anything to do with integration of power for clean hydrogen and a lot of these other large technologies is the biggest cost of bringing that project to market. So how do we interconnect to the grid? That's first and foremost. As you're well aware, that's a very complex thing to do these days with the markets changing right before our eyes and all the load that's trying to interconnect to the grid. So how do you get interconnected to the grid? And then once you're interconnected, how do you effectively and optimally structure power deals and optimize those power deals to, one, get you low-cost power, but also to maybe create some market revenue to offset your power cost even further? That's what I do.
Okay. Now, I mean, I've heard so much about like these phantom, data center deals that guys that usually do like strip centers or warehouses are like locking up land, but they're not doing the full cycle of what a data center actually needs, which is land, security, water, and power. Right? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think it's, the two guys in a truck scenario, right? I
Yeah.
mean, everybody's out there looking for the same thing. And I think the difference is the people that have been in this industry for a really long time know how to speak the utility language, talk to the utilities, understand how the utility business model works. So it's easier to understand their challenges when it comes to interconnection. It's really not just about going and get a piece of land. Maybe that used to be the case if you were next to some high voltage equipment, but that ship has sailed. I think a lot of the large scale powered land facilities have seen that and they've moved on. They know that they need power. And so they're looking for, really, do you have an interconnection? Do you have a signed interconnection agreement, right? End of the day, that's the most important thing, because if you don't have that, you're really not getting anything done. And so where do you have a signed interconnection agreement? What are you interconnecting to? When's that going to be available? Right now, a lot of the COD dates are getting pushed out. And then what are the parameters around all that? Do we have to securitize it? How is the market changing? What are we going to be required to do as a large load? For example, we just had the legislative session in Texas where the governor just signed Senate Bill 6 that creates new parameters for large loads interconnecting into the market over 75 megawatts, right? So now you have to pay attention to all that stuff, and you're having a lot of the RTOs, ISOs that are trying to clean up their queues and get rid of a lot of the speculative interconnection requests. The utilities are doing the same thing. So they're coming out with a bunch of different ways to address that. That makes it a lot more complex to do business in the market than what it once was.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's difficult. The SB6 stuff is interesting when it's like basically, you have to put nat gas on, right? Because they didn't allow batteries to be part of that firming requirement. But then the nat gas turbines are backed out till 2030 before they can even be delivered, let alone be installed. I was talking to somebody this morning at that breakfast, and they were just like, "Yeah, I mean, we're getting some stuff from overseas. It's just, it's supply and demand. The price is going to go really high, and we'll get it into America, but, like, whatever the LCOE used to be, the levelized cost of energy for nat gas, I mean, I've seen some stuff in West Virginia or Pennsylvania where they're gonna build it behind the meter for a data center. It's 4x what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just gonna go back to ratepayers eventually.
That's right. Everything is double the time, double the cost minimum, and potentially even more than that based on the technology. So, again, everybody's aware of the data center push out there. Not all of our sites are going to be green hydrogen any longer. Maybe one or two of those sites that are along the coast, especially in the Gulf Coast region where it makes the most sense to do a hydrogen project. But all of the rest of our sites, we've pivoted those to data center development and other large industrial load development. And just because of the utility timelines and challenges, we're looking at on-site generation for all of those projects. And these are, 600 megawatt scale projects. So
Mhm.
it's not a small feat to build that size project. People just talking megawatts and gigawatts these days, but it wasn't long ago where the largest size project on the grid was only a couple of hundred megawatts. So it is definitely a challenge, and we're looking at all sources. We're looking at geothermal, small modular nuclear, but natural gas is the technology right now. That's what's going to prevail. And just like anything else in our society, when you have that kind of demand and people willing to pay those prices, it just keeps going up until people aren't willing to pay the prices anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a breaking point for everything where things just we're introducing friction that creates market inefficiencies, right?
That's right.
I mean, that's one of the things I was explaining to a PE guy yesterday, was asking for my advice on, maintenance companies for residential solar. I'm like, "Hey, when we're 3x kilowatt price of Australia, when we have a stronger supply chain, similar labor, and there's an entire solar bro culture, anytime there's a bro culture in anything, tech bros, finance bros, there's just market inefficiencies that they are taking advantage of. I mean,
That's right.
it doesn't work. You don't see that in the military. The closest thing to a bro culture is really like the E4 mafia, which, you know, are capable of amazing things, both for good and evil. And I love
That's right.
them, except at 2 a.m. when you're on staff duty and you get a call about somebody wrapping their car around the light pole at a strip club or something ridiculous that you never thought that this is now my professional job, is going down to the jail at 2 a.m. on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that story of mine, let's go back to when you joined the Navy. So, where were you when you decided the Navy is a great idea for me?
Wow. Yeah, it's taking me back a little bit. I was in Spain. I was in Spain as a foreign exchange student, and I wanted to go to Cadiz, which is probably not probably the oldest city in Western civilization. The Phoenicians discovered it in 1100 BC, and it's just got this really rich history, of Carthage and Rome, and Christopher Columbus set sail from there in the 1400s, and just all these explorers. And, I'm a sailor at heart. I've always been on the ocean. So I want to go check it out. And I didn't even know we had a Navy base there. It's a integration of Navy, Marine, and Spanish Navy. It's called Rota, and it's right by Cadiz. And so when I was there, I met some sailors at a bar, and we started talking, and, they were like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "I'm learning Spanish." I got a minor in Spanish in college and decided I wanted to, integrate into the culture. So came here, and they're like, "Oh man, you'd be a good crypto." And I was like, "Crypto, what's that?"
First of all, that's like a heck of a step up from Duolingo on your phone. I want to learn Spanish. Let me go to Spain and just live there in the oldest city in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, it was quite the experience, and I learned a lot. It was amazing. But anyway, back to your question, that's where, I learned about the Navy, and I knew about the Navy before that, but learned about like the MOSs in the Navy, and that there was actually a position for Spanish linguists, right? And so when I got back to the States, I went to a recruiter and started talking about it, and I was like, hey, I want to do this and I know Spanish. So, how do I get in? And he was like, just walk me through everything. And went in as a NCO to get the MOS that I wanted. And man, that was it. I didn't even tell my parents. I just signed on the dotted line and
I've never,
came home and
in the past 3 weeks, I've heard like 2 stories of people like, oh, I just didn't bother to tell anyone that I lived with that this was happening. Just,
nope, signed up and that was it.
and you're
So
close with your parents. This wasn't like
very
a, like,
close.
I can't stand this. I'm running away from my family.
No, we had talked about this, during some of our other exchanges, but my dad owned an oilfield services company and really had me lined up to go in and work under him and run the company and take it over one day. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to make my own way, and I used the Navy to do that.
I could just see you in basic training in the front leaning rest going, I could have been just running a damn company right now. And here I am watching my sweat pool in front of my eyes on the floor.
Yeah. Well, we'll stay away from basic and, skip that part. But the rest was amazing. I mean, I don't know. I loved my time in the Navy.
Yeah. So, along the way, did you meet your wife while you were in the Navy or was that after the military?
Yeah. So I knew my wife. We grew up together in South Louisiana. So I knew Heather
Classic
forever.
Louisiana story.
It is. And she was living in Houston at the time. And so after, my Navy days, I got out in 98 and moved to Houston. And, we had been keeping in touch and hanging out and ended up getting married.
So that brought you to Houston, 98.
It did.
What was that like getting your first job after the Navy?
It was interesting. It was, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was going to use the Navy as a stepping stone to get into one of the 3-letter agencies, specifically the FBI was my focus. And in my area of the Navy, which was the Naval Security Group, I worked with a lot of those guys, NSA, FBI, you name it. And I don't know, I wanted to do something different and it changed for me. And I, went to graduate school in the Navy. I was working shift work and doing school at nights, very little sleep during that period. Got my master's degree in business. And so, after that, I wanted to do something business oriented. And I called up my dad and I said, hey, do you know anybody in Houston? I'm going to stay here. Houston's where I'm going to live. And a friend of a friend connection gave me a shot at a startup natural gas storage company and went through that for a little bit and then made some connections through that and met some people that were at a company called Enron. And they were like, Kevin, man, you got to come to this new company called Enron. Like this is
What could possibly
they're
go
changing the
wrong?
world.
What could possibly go
Yeah,
wrong?
what could possibly go wrong?
Changing
And
the
so,
world.
did that. And that's what really propelled me into the energy industry. The natural gas storage stuff was awesome. I learned a lot. Those guys were really smart and they came from Tejas Power Corporation. They were a group called Haddington Ventures. The guy I was working with was Tom Dill, super smart guy, taught me a lot of good stuff. And that really piqued my interest enough to keep it going. And I mean, it's been one thing after another for 27 years.
So going back to even like your dad making that introduction, I just hear a lot of like networking connections, like being the through line on these transitions. Once you're in, you're getting pulled into the next job. I always tell people like, unless you're making a massive change, changing from tech to medical or, energy to pharmaceuticals or whatever, you should be pulled into your next opportunity. Right? Because you've done a good job and you've met enough people that know you've done a good job and that you like you. How have you seen that, juxtaposed with like, you and I first met at the Elite Meet.
Elite Meet.
Yeah. So, they're trying to help these, high profile, hard charging fighter pilots, SF dudes and dudettes like get into industry. I mean, it's all about networking and who you know and leveraging the military. That's really what we're trying to do with Project Vanguard is consolidate all these people that are already here so that when people want to get in, they know how to get in. If you had to do it again, how would you go about doing that for somebody who's listening? Both getting into a industry and moving up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'd find somebody like you. I mean, and I'm not tooting your horn. I mean, you're the ultimate networker, right? You
I'll give you
create,
$5 later.
I mean, Energy Underground. I mean, you pull me into a lot of the veteran organizations. I would find somebody like you and create a network. I mean, that's what you have to do. Every position, every place that I've gone in my career has been through somebody that I know. And I was fortunate to have been introduced to a huge, really pillar of the energy industry where all these amazing people worked, and that was Enron.
Mhm.
And then, made all those relationships and then went to Calpine from Enron, made another bunch of great relationships there. And so just built up my network. And over time, people know what you can do. They know where your area of focus is. They know who you are. And you get a phone call. Hey, I'm starting this up, or I'm doing this, or and it just rolls.
Yeah.
Right. And so we didn't have all of this back then that we have today. I mean, you've got Elite Meet, the Honor Foundation, you've got Next Stop, Combined Arms, you've got your stuff you putting together, Project Vanguard, all the energy stuff. It is like overwhelming all the stuff that veterans have at their disposal. And it's amazing. It's awesome. So I would say, look, go first, talk to all these people, call people like me, call the people that you've had on your podcast that have all said the same thing. It's like, call me. I know people. I'll help you out, and find those people that can help you get that shot. And once you get it, you got to prove yourself, right? And then after that, it just rolls.
Yeah. I always tell people, listen, get in the Slack channel, start meeting some people. And whenever they come back and they're like, hey, so I've met a bunch of people, they said I should talk to you. I'm like, great. You've actually like used the network. You're actually following up and you're taking this thing, under your own control and working it. The thing that always kills me is when I spend a half hour or an hour, shooting the breeze, giving some advice, make an introduction to somebody in my network, and then they don't follow up. Because then that means the next time I want to introduce somebody to that person or recommend them for a job, it's so much harder, right?
You have to capitalize on what's available to you. When you get the opportunity, you can't overlook it. Like, opportunity doesn't knock twice, right? I think that's the saying. And it's so true. And so that's something I've never passed up. If there's always like, it doesn't matter. I get so many requests on LinkedIn from so many people that doesn't even have to do with my industry, but I just have the conversation because you never know where those conversations lead. But once you get the opportunity identified, you have to go.
Yeah.
You have to hit the gas, right?
Yeah. So I want you to tell the story of when Enron was winding down and what you were doing, because I find that fascinating with the contracts and the market development and everything like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy time, man.
And you just had, like, your boys were little, like little.
Yeah, my first son was born during that time, right? 2000. And so newborn, really new marriage, all that was going on. And Enron was Enron, man. I mean, you were working, you were there all the time. That was your family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you were going to make it there, that's just how it was. And so we worked. We put in a lot of hours, and it was an amazing couple of years, and then everything hit. The company was amazing. There was just this little piece that went bad. And so unfortunately, that meant the majority of the people were gone. I mean, it just unwound the whole company. I was fortunate in the fact that I had been connected with a lot of the very large, what we call bundled deals at the time. These were really large customers, hotel groups, Oakley, Johnson and Johnson, whoever had a bunch of facilities across the United States, helping them to set strategy around power, natural gas, demand response, energy efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. So I got a call the weekend before Enron was going to file bankruptcy, had no idea this was happening, and was presented with an opportunity to stay on board to unwind these deals. And accepted that opportunity, didn't know what I was getting into. It ended up being much crazier than I would have ever expected, even though I was expecting it to be crazy. and did that for 4 additional years through bankruptcy until basically there was nothing else to unwind. But yeah, it was basically where I learned a lot of knowledge about just companies in general, like how to work a reorganization and how to do certain things around unwinding deals and how deals are structured. I mean, try to unwind a deal through bankruptcy, you're going to learn every facet of that deal. And so I learned from a backwards kind of way how to structure power deals and how to structure business deals. And it really fit for what I was trying to do in life. So did that for a while, met some really good people across the board doing that in certain industries, and went over to Calpine and helped them replicate that. And that really propelled my career.
Yeah. And I love how like you're kind of building, or you're at the time part of how the American energy market is being built, right? On these big deals, the PPAs, these power purchase agreements, they're maybe taken for granted now is just how business is done. But I mean, it's just a financial construct. It's just, a way of papering something that became accepted over time. But can you talk about other deals like that? The Solar City deal, on the VPPs, the virtual power plants, what that ended up becoming and what y'all were doing back then.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. Yeah, once you learn how to financially structure those deals, then you can do that. And so from Calpine, I did a couple of startup deals, and a few friends of mine were over at a company called MP2. And so went over there, and they were really creative around large loads and how to structure power deals around that, really doing unique stuff around creating the demand response market in ERCOT and just operating and optimizing power. And so coming over to there, it was at the time they were working on a deal with Solar City. And so I integrated into that deal with the team, and that kind of spiraled into how do we really start looking at all these new technologies coming on the grid, like solar, batteries, electric vehicles. How do you optimize them and monetize them? And how do you create a product that makes it attractive for a customer to go purchase that asset, right? And so for solar, it's like net metering, right? But ERCOT didn't have that. So you financially structure a product to take the power into your book, any excess generation from the asset, and then you pay that back either through a reduced rate or credit on the bill or something like that. And then once you start getting into those things, you realize you can replicate that with battery technology, with electric vehicles by maybe charging during off-peak hours when power's low and things like that. So I think, Solar City became Tesla. Tesla created a whole battery VPP group. They were integrating into ERCOT at the time. I think I was pretty close to being one of the first Powerwall 2s they installed in the market, if not the first. And so just help them understand that program. And now they have a, huge VPP program in ERCOT with thousands of batteries. They have an electricity plan that you can get through Tesla that optimizes that battery, gives you a credit back. It was really cool to see all that. And, I have the battery. I'm on the Tesla program. So I'm seeing all that fruition that we created way back when. And it's just really cool to see.
How long ago did you have yours installed?
Oh, this was probably 10 years ago.
Still same battery you have at the house now?
Yeah, works great. I didn't even notice. I got to look at my app when the power goes off. I don't know, the lights don't even blink. And so I'm about to get another one. I looked at getting a generator, and it's costly. I have to run a gas line and everything. And so I'm probably going to get another Powerwall just to have some redundancy and more power that I can use for the VPP program.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm on one of the VPP things now, and we have Generac batteries because they were backlogged on Tesla when I was ordering, but I really enjoyed it. I want to kind of dig in on a field report. So talk to me a little bit more about just the power generation research you've been doing lately.
Yeah, so, we talked about the utilities challenges of just capacity being constrained with all these large loads coming into the market. So how do you deal with that? You deal with it by building your own generation, basically. And you do it either as a bridge in a market that you have a pretty good outlook on when that capacity is going to be able to be delivered. So you can build a bridge type concept and then move it into a backup power concept, on site behind the meter type generation. And so that's what we've been looking at, whether it's a lot is natural gas right now, but again, looking at some geothermal stuff. SMRs are really attractive, small modular nuclear, but I think that's still a little bit of ways away. And there are a lot of large companies that are looking at that as well. So you're going to have some constraints. But natural gas is first and foremost, just because the footprint's a little smaller and I can do it quicker and I have some optionality around it. I can use a reciprocating engine. Don't have to have a turbine, but I can use that. And there's just a bunch of different ways you can configure it based on what you're trying to do. So our team has been doing a lot of research around it. We've been talking to everybody that you can think of that has to do with natural gas, fired power generation, and really just trying to put these together to, one, be able to deliver the capacity to our projects when we want it delivered, and two, have a longer term outlook on being able to optimize our power in the market once our facilities are built. So, and then in some very limited cases, maybe it's a prime power scenario where we're just not going to be able to get capacity where we want it. And so we'll just build an off-grid concept. So that's kind of the areas that we're looking at.
So Kevin, as we're wrapping up, I really wanted to talk a little bit more about, just your journey. I like to joke you were a seaman and all the other follow-on jokes that come from that. But as a petty officer, if you went back in time to coming into the military and coming out into the workforce, given today's current market environment, what would be your advice to that younger you?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Look, it's stuff we talked about before. Look, stepping into the energy markets, especially these transformative energy markets, isn't just about learning new technology. It's really about learning yourself all over again, right? I mean, for many of us who served, we're used to structure, purpose, in a team, right? Out here, the mission is different, but the mindset that carried you through those deployments carry you here as well. So networking, you're going to hear me talk about that all the time. I think it can't be overstated. It's super important. A lot of people think about it as, schmoozing or, I'm not social. You have to be a social person.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think about it like that. It's just talking to people, right? It's just think about it as building your next team unit, right? Every conversation is a gathering of information. It's a recon. It's a patrol for opportunities. Every handshake is a bridge to new intelligence, right? The energy space, it's full of people who want to collaborate, innovate, and build something bigger than themselves. I mean, this stuff's fun, right?
Yeah,
So,
and do it with people you like. That's the essence of Project Vanguard. Like, you want to get into an industry, well, come meet a bunch of other vets. It's hard enough to get into an industry you know nothing about. At least meet some people that you like hanging out with.
yeah, I mean, look, that's how you and I started, right? At the Elite Meet, we talked about that previously. We both are part of a lot of different organizations. I personally do a lot of support for the Navy SEAL Foundation and a lot of the other organizations that we talked about. So, look, all this is veterans get out of the military and they think it's unfamiliar territory, but it's not. It's a very familiar language for veterans, right? So, that's the first thing. Start with networking. Hit a lot of these organizations that we've been talking about. But second is you got to focus on routine and growth. I mean, that's what I do every day and it never stops. And so it comes from consistent habits. It's anything you do. It's not just entering the energy markets. It's, getting up and exercising, meditating, reading whatever it is you do, reading a book or.
What are you reading right now? Like, what are you reading that's relevant to the industry or this conversation?
Yeah, well, for this conversation right now, I'm reading a book by Dr. David R. Hawkins called Letting Go. He has another book that's called Power versus Force. So I'll talk a little bit about those, but it's learning something new every day. It's what I tell my boys. It's what I tell everybody I meet. It's staying curious about the new technology or the business you want to start or the position you want to be in. It's like a daily rhythm for your mind, like PT in the military, right? You're doing it every day. So, that's that external. The internal is like you were just asking about. How do you feed your inner development? And so I do that by a lot of books, just reading about what others out there are doing and how you perceive the world and So a favorite author of mine is David Hawkins. He has the book called Letting Go and Power versus Force. And they teach about, how real power doesn't come from control or force, which is what people think, but it's from more alignment, clarity, and consciousness, right? And
hmm
so you find those parallels with leadership lessons that you already know: staying calm under pressure, acting from integrity, not reacting, really emotional intelligence, right, is where it all comes from. And then there's another favorite author called Robert Greene. He does the 48 Laws of Power, Mastery, and the
Read
Laws of
that.
Human Nature. And his writing, people think, it's a manipulation and they're kind of put off by it, but it's not. It's really survival. It's learning to read people, it's learning to read yourself and knowing where real influence begins. So it kind of all goes back to the transformation of the energy transformation that we've been talking about, right? Energy, systems, communities. But, for veterans like us, it's a personal transformation. It's taking the discipline you've mastered and applying it to something that gives power back to the world, literally, right?
A lot of times when we talk about this, it's read this book, it'll help you get this job, right? And I think a lot of what you're talking about is like build a personal foundation so you can go get any job and be successful in your life. So, I mean,
Exactly.
I get that. Sometimes those are the harder questions to grapple with, that you got to go, be alone, put down your phone, have a beer, and just be alone with your thoughts for a little bit.
Yeah, you got to talk to people, man. I see so many people, like, I'm out and about with Heather or, with coworkers, and I see these people, they're on their phone all the time, like at these events. And I'm like, why aren't you not talking to people? Like, go talk to, nothing's ever going to happen for you unless you can go talk to people, right? And so, look, just remember, it's building your networks like building a new unit. You
Yeah.
got to build your habits like a training plan and build your mind like the next mission, right? It starts here. And, keep your compass steady, purpose clear, and your power aligned, man.
Well, listen, Kevin, I really appreciate you coming out today, the advice you have, just the journey you've had, from coming out of Louisiana, getting into the Navy, coming through some seminal events in the energy industry. You're almost like my Forrest Gump of the energy transition or transformation, whatever you want to call it. And I just think that sharing your story is really powerful for a lot of younger vets. And I know, your intel side is always there to not want to give too many details. So I know that this is a really great window into your experience. And it's a really big thing to have happen for people to have access to. So thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Same here, man.
Thanks for tuning into the Project Vanguard podcast. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who's ready to think differently, whether it's about an all-the-above energy approach, how energy security is national security, or the veteran workforce in our industry. If you believe what we're building, a quick review goes a long way. You can do that wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep up the fire.